Her name is Danielle. I still remember the first time I saw her at a mutual friend's engagement party. It was one of those low-key things in someone's backyard, fairy lights strung up, people drinking out of red cups. She was sitting cross-legged on a picnic blanket, surrounded by a group of people who clearly adored her. Something about her laugh, it wasn't loud, just unfiltered, cut through the noise. I didn't talk to her that night, just kept looking over and wondering how someone could seem so at home in their own skin. A couple weeks later, that same friend invited a few of us out for drinks. Danielle was there again, and this time we actually talked. I don't even remember the first thing I said to her, but I remember how she looked right at me when I spoke, like she wasn't thinking about anything else. We started seeing each other pretty soon after that. She worked in marketing. I was just getting settled in at my company in logistics. From the beginning, there was this unspoken understanding between us. We didn't play games, didn't try to impress each other. It just worked. We had that easy kind of connection, like we'd known each other longer than we had. After a year of dating, we moved in together. I brought way too many coffee mugs, and she brought throw pillows. We figured it out. A couple more years, and I proposed. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony at her parents' lake house. Just family and close friends, nothing flashy, just a lot of laughter, homemade food, and some tears during the vows, mostly mine, if I'm being honest. We've been married now for 6 years. Life together's been stable, comfortable in a good way. We've got a cozy two-story in a quiet neighborhood. Danielle loves to fill the house with candles and fresh flowers, says it keeps the place from feeling like a box. I do the yard work, keep the grill going on weekends. We both work full-time, but weekends are ours. Sunday morning pancakes are a tradition neither of us dares to break. We have a dog, Cooper, a floppy-eared lab mix who thinks he owns the house. No kids yet, though we talked about it early on. Lately, we've been more focused on travel. We try to take at least one real vacation a year and a couple weekend getaways whenever we can. She loves the beach. I'm more of a mountains guy, so we alternate. Fair's fair. If you looked at us from the outside, you'd probably think we're just a regular couple doing our best, and honestly, that's how it felt. No drama, no explosions. Just quiet routines, shared glances, and the kind of inside jokes that only build with time. That's where we were. That's who we were. Danielle and I settled into marriage pretty naturally. We weren't the kind of couple who had to figure out how to live together after the wedding. We'd already ironed out the little things, who takes out the trash, who does the dishes, how to handle it when one of us has a bad day, and the other's just trying to help without making it worse. She's a morning person, I'm not. Every weekday, she's up by 6:30, doing yoga or scrolling through home decor videos while sipping black coffee. I usually roll out of bed an hour later, shuffle into the kitchen, and mumble something until my own caffeine kicks in. She teases me every morning, says I look like I time-traveled from 1997 and landed straight into the kitchen. I usually just grunt and steal a piece of toast. Evenings are slower. Most nights we make dinner together, nothing fancy, but there's something comforting about chopping vegetables side by side or arguing, lightly, over how crispy roasted potatoes should be. Then it's usually a show we both like or taking Cooper on a walk around the neighborhood. She always waves at every neighbor. I always pretend not to know who anyone is. She's the extrovert in the relationship. The one who remembers birthdays, who always has a gift ready 2 weeks in advance, who gets genuinely excited to host people. I'm more the low-key guy in the corner making sure the Bluetooth speaker doesn't disconnect and pouring drinks. We've always complimented each other that way. Where she lights up a room, I anchor it. One thing I really admired about Danielle was her drive. She started off doing freelance marketing jobs on the side while working full-time at a boutique firm, then slowly built her own little brand. In the past year, she landed 2 long-term clients that gave her more freedom, more money too. I was proud of her. Still am, in a way. Watching her grow into someone who just handled things, that was impressive to me. She always made it look easy, even when I knew it wasn't. We didn't have a perfect life, but it felt good. Solid. There were lazy Sundays, road trips with music turned up too loud, nights out that turned into late-night fast food runs, and quiet evenings where we didn't even speak, just read books in the same room, and that was enough. She'd stretch out on the couch with her legs across my lap, and I'd absent-mindedly trace my fingers along her ankles while scrolling my phone. We had our little rituals. Taco Tuesdays, coffee shop runs every Saturday morning, a movie night once a week even if neither of us could stay awake through the whole thing. She liked to plan our vacations down to the minute. I liked to pretend I didn't care, but I always ended up loving them anyway. Looking back now, those routines meant more to me than I ever realized. It wasn't about the big gestures, it was about the small stuff, the unspoken stuff. I thought that was what kept us strong. I thought we had the kind of marriage that could withstand anything. But sometimes you don't see the wave until it's already pulling you under. I've always believed that the real strength of a marriage doesn't show up during the big moments, it shows up in the ordinary ones. The mornings where nothing special happens. The days when you're just existing in the same space. If that still feels easy, still feels right, then you're good. For the most part, that's how life with Danielle was. We were each other's person. I'd come home from work, kick off my shoes, and she'd already be halfway through a podcast, curled up with her laptop and some article she'd half read and wanted to tell me about. She always told stories like they were secrets, lowered voice, animated hands, leaning in like the information was just for me. She was good at that, making me feel like the center of things. We weren't flashy people. We weren't posting our lives online or doing the over-the-top date nights. But we knew each other. She liked her wine chilled but not too cold. I knew she always used the back burner of the stove, never the front ones. She said it made her feel safer, more in control. I never asked why, just took it in and made sure to leave the back burners clean. We had our arguments, sure. Stupid stuff, mostly. One time we didn't speak for 2 days because I bought the wrong brand of almond milk. Another time she got upset because I didn't notice her new haircut, which, in my defense, was like a 2-inch trim. But that's married life, isn't it? You get over it. You learn when to push and when to back off. I trusted her completely. Not in a performative way, but in the quiet kind of trust that lets you fall asleep next to someone night after night without a second thought. I never checked her phone, never wondered where she was if she got home a little late. If she said she was out with friends, I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? She gave me no reason to doubt her. And maybe that's part of what makes everything harder to understand now. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. This part of the story isn't about what went wrong. Not yet. This is still about how things were. Danielle had this thing where she'd randomly suggest new hobbies. One month it was pottery, the next it was salsa dancing, then gardening. I never really cared about the hobbies themselves, but I liked watching her get excited about something. She'd drag me into it with her half the time. I've got a whole box of ugly clay bowls and one very awkward dance class memory to show for it. She made life colorful. That's probably the best way to put it. I'm more of a grayscale kind of guy, she brought in the rest. At work, things were going pretty well. I'd gotten a small promotion the year before, and while I wasn't exactly changing the world, I was comfortable. I had a boss who seemed to like me, a team that respected me, and enough PTO saved up to plan something nice for our anniversary. Danielle had floated the idea of going somewhere warm that year, maybe a girls' trip before we did something together. At the time, I thought, good for her. She deserves it. If I had known what that trip would become, but no, that part comes later. For now, this was still the quiet before the storm. It started like most things do in a marriage, not with something big or dramatic, but with a conversation at the kitchen table. Danielle brought it up on a Saturday morning. I'd just poured my coffee and was flipping through emails on my phone when she leaned against the counter and said, "I've been thinking about taking a short trip with the girls. Nothing crazy, just a beach thing for 5 days. A reset." I looked up. "Yeah? Sounds good. Who's going?" She rattled off a few names. Maya, Celeste, her cousin Brianna. All people I knew she'd done trips with before. I didn't think anything of it. In fact, I liked the idea. Danielle had been working a lot and talking about how burnout she felt. She said she needed some sun, some sand, and no deadlines. I joked that she just wanted an excuse to drink margaritas before noon. She smiled. That too. A few days later she circled back. Said she'd found a great resort deal online, but it needed to be booked fast. I was in the middle of a work call when she texted me a screenshot and asked if she could use part of our savings to cover it. "It's a little more than I expected," she wrote, "but I'll split it with the girls once we're there." I didn't hesitate. I texted back, "Go for it. You deserve it." And I meant it. We'd been good with money, always communicative. We kept a joint account for household stuff, and each had our own separate checking accounts for fun money. But bigger things, travel, repairs, savings, we talked about. I transferred over the money that afternoon. She booked the trip the same day. Said she was excited, that it had been too long since she had real girl time. She even showed me the hotel on her laptop later that night. White sand, turquoise water, a rooftop infinity pool. It looked like something out of a commercial. The week before she left, she was practically glowing, getting her nails done, trying on swimsuits in the mirror, and asking my opinion. She packed 3 days in advance, said she didn't want to forget anything. I teased her about being a professional overpacker. She smacked my arm and said, "You love it." I dropped her off at the airport on a Thursday morning. Her suitcase was stuffed. She had that huge sun hat she only ever wore on vacations, and she kissed me twice before walking through security. "I'll text when I land," she said. She did. Everything felt normal. I remember feeling kind of proud of myself that day. Like, yeah, look at us. We're one of those couples that doesn't suffocate each other. She needs a break. I support her. No jealousy, no drama. Just trust. I didn't know, of course. I had no way of knowing that she wasn't going with Maya or Celeste or Brianna. That none of them had even been invited. I didn't know that she was boarding that flight with my boss. The first couple of days while Danielle was gone, I didn't think much about it. I stayed busy with work, took Cooper on longer walks, and even got around to cleaning out the garage, something I'd been putting off for months. She texted like normal, photos of palm trees, little videos of waves crashing against the shore, a selfie of her in big sunglasses with a frozen drink in hand. Nothing out of the ordinary. I remember thinking she looked happy, and I was glad she got away. She deserved to unwind. But around the third day, something started to feel off. It wasn't just one thing, more like a subtle shift. The texts got shorter. I'd ask what she was up to, and she'd reply with vague stuff like, just lounging, or heading to dinner. I'd follow up with questions. Where are you eating? What did you order? Just to keep the conversation going. Sometimes she wouldn't reply for hours. Once she left me on read until the next morning. Her excuse was that she fell asleep early, which I wanted to believe, but it didn't quite sit right. Danielle was never someone who missed a text. She had this thing about being present in conversations, even over the phone. But now it felt like I was interrupting something I wasn't supposed to see. Still, I didn't let myself spiral. I chalked it up to vacation mode. Maybe she just wanted to unplug a little. I told myself not to overthink things. But even so, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out of sync. It was small details that caught my attention. The way her tone had changed, how her messages were stripped of personality. They read like someone trying to check a box instead of someone excited to talk to me. There was a distance in her words I couldn't name, but I could feel it like static on the line. Then, one night while I was watching TV, I got a message from one of Danielle's friends, Celeste. Nothing major. She replied to a meme I had posted in our group chat, then casually asked if Danielle was back from her trip yet. I froze. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. I texted back, "She's still down there with you guys, right?" Celeste replied, "Down where?" I felt something shift in my chest. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I asked, "Weren't you and Maya and Brianna on the trip with her?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished. She finally wrote back, "Oh, I thought she was going with her cousins or something. I wasn't invited. Neither was Maya. Weird. Weird. Yeah, that's one word for it." I didn't respond after that. I just sat there staring at the screen, trying to process the confusion blooming into something darker. It didn't make sense. Why would Danielle lie about who she was going with? Why give me a whole list of names? I knew Celeste wasn't the type to stir drama. She was kind, but not particularly close to Danielle anymore. So why would she make that up? For the first time, I felt a knot of unease in my gut that wouldn't go away. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe Danielle had changed her plans last minute. Maybe it really was her cousins. Maybe I'd misunderstood. But deep down, something in me had already started to turn. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain ran wild with possibilities I wasn't ready to face. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I needed to wait, to talk to her directly when she came back. That was still a few days away. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had already started unraveling, and I was the only one who hadn't caught up to it yet. By the time Danielle was supposed to come back, I was caught in this strange in-between state, half denial, half dread. I kept replaying the conversation with Celeste in my head, trying to find some way to explain it that didn't end in betrayal. But the more I thought about it, the worse it felt. Danielle wasn't just vague during her trip. She was evasive. And now, knowing none of the people she claimed to be traveling with were even there, I couldn't stop looking at everything through a different lens. She flew in on a Monday evening. I picked her up from the airport, like usual. She wore a loose white sweater and sunglasses that stayed on until we got to the car. When she saw me, she gave me a quick hug, a kiss on the cheek, Nothing unusual, but not exactly warm either. The kind of greeting you give a friend, not your husband. I told myself I was being dramatic. Trip go okay? I asked, watching her throw her bag into the back seat. It was great, she said, smiling just enough. Relaxing. I really needed it. She talked about the weather, the food, the girls. She used their names casually, like she'd rehearsed it. There was a strange tightness in how she spoke. Like she was trying to be natural, but something was slightly off. She didn't show me any photos. Didn't offer much detail, just the broad strokes. We hung by the pool most days, ate at this amazing seafood place, did a little shopping. I kept nodding, kept listening, and didn't ask the questions I wanted to. Not yet. That night, after she showered and fell asleep early, I sat in the living room with the TV on but muted. I stared at the coffee table and wondered what it was I was actually looking for. Proof? A mistake? Maybe I wanted her to lie again, something I could catch. Or maybe I just didn't want to be the guy who got fooled in his own house. I checked the luggage. I'm not proud of it, but I did. Her suitcase was neatly unpacked, toiletries back in their place, folded clothes already in the laundry hamper. Too neat. I couldn't explain it, but it felt staged, like she didn't want me to notice what wasn't there. There were no shopping bags, no receipts, no souvenirs. Just a faint scent of some new perfume I didn't recognize, and a pair of heels that didn't match anything she owned before she left. The next day, I called out sick from work. Not because I was actually sick, but because my mind was running in circles and I couldn't shake the tension from my chest. Danielle had gone to her freelance client's office, said she needed to catch up. I opened her laptop. Nothing. Cleared browser history, logged out of everything. That wasn't strange in itself. Danielle was private with her tech. Always had passwords. But now, it didn't feel like privacy. It felt like a wall. I considered asking her directly, but something in my gut told me not to. Not yet. I needed more. Not because I wanted to trap her, but because part of me was still hoping I was wrong. That there was some version of this that made sense. That night, we had dinner. She laughed at one of my dumb jokes and reached across the table to touch my hand, and I just sat there, staring at her fingers and wondering if they had touched someone else's face a few days ago. I hated myself for thinking that, but I couldn't stop. Before we went to bed, I asked, "Did you end up meeting up with Celeste or Maya at all?" She paused for a second too long. Just a second. But I caught it. "No," she said, waving a hand. Maya couldn't get time off, and Celeste had a thing with her kid. It ended up just being Bree and some of her friends from work. "Oh," I said. "That's not what Celeste said." She blinked. Her smile faltered for just a second. "Well, maybe there was a mix-up. I don't know why she'd say that." She turned off the light and rolled away from me in bed. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. That was the first time I knew she was lying to me. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But I knew it in my bones. Something was happening. I wish I could say I confronted her right then. I wish I had the nerve to look her in the eye and demand the truth. But I didn't. Not because I was afraid of the answer, though maybe I was, a little, but because I still wanted to believe there was another explanation. Something that made it all feel less deliberate, less cruel. Something that didn't involve me being an idiot who handed his wife money to cheat on him in peace. But instead of answers, I got silence. Danielle avoided the topic entirely the next day. She acted like nothing happened, like our little exchange about Celeste never occurred. She made coffee, asked me about my meeting, told me she might go see her sister over the weekend. It was like watching someone run a script. Every word she said felt just a little too smooth, a little too careful. I couldn't stop watching her. It was exhausting, second-guessing everything, questioning her smiles, wondering if she had been texting him 5 minutes before curling up next to me on the couch. I was starting to notice new patterns, like how she kept her phone closer than before, face down on the nightstand, always in her pocket, never left unattended anymore. Or how she suddenly started locking the bathroom door, something she hadn't done in years. They weren't big red flags on their own, but together, they painted a picture I didn't want to see. A few nights later, I came home a little earlier than usual. She wasn't expecting me. I could tell by the way she jumped slightly when I walked through the door. She was in the kitchen, pretending to be on a call, but I could hear the dead quiet from the other end of the phone. When she saw me, she quickly hung up, said it was just a quick check-in with Brianna about some project. Her voice was calm. Her smile was casual. But her eyes were flicking, calculating. Like she was waiting to see if I believed her. That night, I barely slept. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling while she breathed evenly beside me. I was stuck in this cycle of knowing and not knowing. And worse, feeling like the only person not in on the secret was me. The next day at work, I sat through a meeting with my boss, Jeremy, who just returned from a corporate retreat in Mexico. That's what he called it. The words hit me like a slap. Mexico. I didn't react. I kept my expression flat while he talked about new client relationships and casually mentioned needing a rest after a long week in the sun. He was tanned, slightly sunburned on the nose. His usual perfectly combed hair was trimmed shorter than I'd ever seen it. I nodded through the meeting, but my mind was racing. Mexico. Same week Danielle was gone. Same vague answers. Same timeline. My throat went dry. The worst part? I liked Jeremy. Or at least, I had. He'd been a mentor in some ways, respected, confident, the kind of guy who made everyone lean in when he spoke. I never thought of him as a friend, not really, but I trusted him. He'd even met Danielle before. At the company Christmas party last year. They only spoke briefly, but I remembered how she laughed a little too long at one of his jokes. I never thought anything of it. Until now. I went back to my desk and just sat there, staring at the screen, unable to focus. Every instinct in me was screaming that something was happening, that something had happened, but I didn't have the proof. Just puzzle pieces. Just timelines that matched a little too well and stories that didn't line up the way they should. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, pretending everything was fine while my gut twisted itself into knots. I needed to know, one way or another. I still don't know if they meant for me to see it. I've gone over that day so many times in my head, what I did, what I said, what I should have done. But no matter how I slice it, nothing prepares you for the moment you stop being a husband and realize you've become a punchline. It happened on a Friday afternoon. I was supposed to be at the office. I had told Danielle I was working late, even added it to our shared calendar just to sell it. But I wasn't at work. I was at a cafe a few blocks from the house, nursing a bitter coffee I couldn't taste and watching the clock tick past 5. I'd already made up my mind that if nothing happened by 6, I'd head home, pretend like the walls weren't closing in on me, and go back to playing dumb. At 5:27, I got the notification from the smart doorbell camera. Motion detected, front door. I opened the app, and there they were, Danielle and Jeremy, walking up the front steps of my house, laughing, together, her suitcase in one hand, his duffel bag in the other. She turned to him and said something I couldn't hear, but I could see her smile. That same smile I thought was mine. I didn't think, I just drove. I didn't care about the plan or what I'd tell her. I was halfway home before I realized my hands were shaking on the wheel. It was like my body knew before my brain did. It was over. Not just the lie. Not just the marriage. Everything. When I walked through the door, they were already inside. Danielle had her coat off. Jeremy was in my kitchen, like he'd done it 100 times before. Like he belonged there. The moment they saw me, time seemed to slow. Danielle's face went pale. Jeremy just blinked. A pause. Then, as calm as you like, he stepped forward. Matt, he said, with that same fake warmth he used in meetings. You weren't supposed to be home. I didn't answer. My eyes were on her. Danielle looked like she wanted to disappear. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She looked caught, but not ashamed. Like the only thing that surprised her was my timing. Why is he here? I asked, finally. She didn't answer. Jeremy stepped in again, more forceful this time. You don't need to make a scene, he said. Let's just be adults about this. I laughed. I actually laughed. Adults? I repeated. You mean like adults who lie? Cheat? Sleep with each other behind someone's back? Jeremy didn't blink. This marriage is clearly over, Matt. And let's be honest, you've been coasting. At work. At home. Danielle deserves better. I looked at her then. Is that what you think too? She held my gaze. I think I'm tired of pretending like we're not already done, she said. You've been stuck in the same place for years, Matt. Comfortable. Safe. Predictable. You stopped trying. I needed something more. And you found that in him? I asked, voice shaking. She didn't flinch. At least he sees me. There was a silence that felt like a vacuum, sucking the air out of the room. Then Jeremy added, like a cherry on top, and by the way, don't bother coming in Monday. You're done here. We're restructuring the team. Effective immediately. I just stared at him. You're firing me? I asked, stunned. He nodded. It's nothing personal. I almost laughed again. You're in my house. With my wife. After sleeping with her behind my back. And now you're firing me. Danielle crossed her arms. Maybe now you'll actually do something with your life. I don't even remember grabbing my keys. I don't remember slamming the door behind me. I just remember standing outside on the porch, staring at my own front door and wondering how the hell it all came to this. They stayed inside. Together. Like it was their house now. I stood there for a while before I drove away. I don't know where I went, only that I needed to be somewhere that didn't smell like betrayal. Everything I'd built, my marriage, my job, my sense of self, collapsed in one afternoon. And now, I was alone. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. It's strange how calm I felt after everything came apart. Not numb exactly, just clear. There was no more second-guessing, no more mental gymnastics, no more giving someone the benefit of the doubt when they had already burned the whole house down. I wasn't interested in apologies. I didn't need explanations. I wanted consequences. They thought I'd disappear, that I'd roll over and lick my wounds while they played house in my living room. They underestimated me. They thought I was soft, predictable, that I wouldn't fight back. I let them believe that. For a few days, I stayed quiet. I answered no calls, ignored the few "we should talk" texts that Danielle sent, and waited. But I wasn't idle. The first thing I did was call Lisa, Jeremy's wife. We'd only met once, briefly, at a holiday party, but I remembered her name and enough details to track her down on social media. I messaged her something simple. "We need to talk. It's about your husband and mine." We met the next day. I didn't expect her to believe me right away, but when I laid it out, timeline, names, receipts, photos from the smart doorbell, a copy of Danielle's booking confirmation. Yes, I had access to our joint email. Lisa didn't even blink. She just nodded and said, "I knew something was off. He stopped touching me 3 months ago." We talked for over 2 hours. It wasn't just therapy. It was strategy. By the end of it, Lisa wasn't crying. She was focused. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Let's ruin them." 3 weeks later, she was pregnant. We didn't plan it, not really. One thing led to another, and maybe we were both just craving some kind of control, some validation that we weren't the broken ones. Maybe it was revenge, maybe it was loneliness, or maybe it was just two people pushed to the edge clinging to something that felt real. But it happened, and when she told me she was expecting, I didn't panic. I didn't regret it. I felt something else entirely. Power. Jeremy didn't know. Danielle didn't either. But I wasn't done. When I went to the office to collect the rest of my things, I made sure no one saw what I was actually doing. I acted like the guy with his head down, packing up quietly. I didn't ask for help. I didn't make a scene. What I did do was access the file server. Jeremy had never revoked my credentials, and I still had full admin access to every folder under my department's umbrella. It didn't take long to find what I needed. There were quarterly tax filings, off-the-book client payments, shady deductions, and doctored invoices. Just enough to paint a picture of creative accounting, and just enough to not raise alarms if you weren't looking too closely. But I was. Jeremy had been skimming and manipulating reports for years. Quietly, carefully, but not perfectly. I made a copy of everything, compiled it, backed it up, labeled it neatly in a flash drive, and mailed it anonymously to the state tax board and a journalist friend I went to college with who still owed me a favor. I didn't add my name. Didn't have to. Then I waited. 2 weeks later, Danielle showed up at my apartment unannounced. I didn't let her in. She stood on the doorstep crying, saying she made a mistake, that she didn't know how far gone Jeremy really was, that he's not who I thought he was. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her. "I miss you," she said. "Please, just let me explain." I closed the door. She kept messaging for days. Long paragraphs, voice notes, even a letter in the mailbox. I didn't read any of it. What was there to say? I'd seen everything I needed to see. That same week, Lisa filed for divorce and told Jeremy about the baby. He tried to deny it, said it couldn't be his, but she had dates, messages, and yes, medical records. He wasn't stupid enough to demand a paternity test. Not once she told him the media had been sniffing around about financial irregularities at his firm. Danielle kept calling. I kept not answering. And when the news finally broke, senior executive under investigation for corporate fraud, I opened a bottle of whiskey and toasted to the silence. Funny how fast things unravel when you stop pretending to hold them together. There's a quiet that comes after destruction. Not peace, exactly, more like a kind of stillness. The kind you feel when the storm finally stops and all that's left are puddles and wreckage. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without feeling like I was bracing for impact. No more lies to decode. No more nights lying awake, wondering who she was texting. No more walking into rooms that smelled like her perfume and asking myself if I even belonged in my own home. All of that was gone. In the weeks after the fallout, I cut ties clean. I deleted old photos, packed up the wedding keepsakes, dropped off the ring at a pawn shop without saying a word. It felt symbolic in a way, not because I needed the money, but because I didn't want to carry around something so heavy anymore. People talk about closure like it's a moment, a decision. But for me, it was slow. It was every morning I didn't check her messages. Every night I didn't replay what I could have done differently. Closure wasn't one door shutting, it was dozens, and I had to walk through each of them alone. I didn't go back to our house. I left it to her, let the lawyers handle the paperwork. I didn't want it. Every corner of that place felt like a memory I no longer trusted. Instead, I found a small loft in a quieter part of the city. Nothing fancy, just clean lines, bare walls, and space to think. I furnished it slowly, second-hand chairs, bookshelves I built myself, a bed I could finally sleep in without waking up in a cold sweat. Cooper came with me, of course. He adjusted better than I did. Dogs always seem to know when you need them close. I started running again, cooking for myself, reconnecting with old friends I drifted from during the marriage. It's funny how you lose parts of yourself in a relationship without even noticing, like giving up little bits of freedom in exchange for comfort. I didn't realize how many things I stopped doing just to make Danielle more comfortable, how much of my personality I dialed down over the years just to keep the peace. Now, there was no one left to dim the volume for. I could just be. And then there was someone new. It started simple. Her name's Erin. We met at a friend's birthday party about 2 months after the dust settled. I wasn't looking for anything, just showed up out of obligation and lingered by the snack table with a beer in my hand, trying to act normal. She made a joke about the awful music playing. I laughed too hard, mostly because it felt good to laugh. We talked for over an hour that night. Not flirting, just talking. I told her I'd been through some stuff. She said, "Haven't we all?" and left it at that. We didn't rush anything. I wasn't ready for big gestures or deep commitments. But she was patient. We'd go on long walks, have dinner on her balcony, talk about everything and nothing. She had this way of looking at me that made me feel like I hadn't been ruined. Like maybe I wasn't just the guy who got cheated on, who lost everything. Maybe I was still someone worth showing up for. A few weeks ago, we took a weekend trip upstate. Just us and Cooper and a cabin with no cell service. One morning, I woke up to find her sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, sipping coffee. No makeup, hair a mess, eyes half closed from sleep, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. It wasn't about falling in love again. Not yet. It was about knowing I could. And when Danielle messaged me again last week, another long, aching monologue about mistakes and second chances, I didn't even open it. I just slid it into the trash folder and kept walking. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. And I didn't need her anymore. This life I'm building isn't perfect. But it's mine. All of it. It's strange, the way life moves on. One day you're standing in the wreckage of everything you thought was permanent, and then months later you find yourself humming while doing the dishes, or smiling at a stranger on the train, and you realize you've survived. Not all at once. Not cleanly. But piece by piece. And survival, real survival, isn't about winning. It's about what you choose to carry forward and what you finally decide to let go. There's still part of me that remembers everything, her voice in the kitchen, the feeling of her hand in mine, the 1,000 little routines we built together. Not with bitterness. Not even anger anymore. Just distance. Like remembering the layout of a house you used to live in. The memories are still there, but they don't hurt the same way. They're just echoes. The company Jeremy ran eventually collapsed under the weight of its own lies. I don't know all the details. I didn't follow it obsessively, but I heard through mutual connections that charges were filed, licenses revoked, assets frozen. Lisa moved out of state. She and I talk occasionally, mostly about the baby. She's handling things with more grace than I probably would have. The child will be raised with love, not out of revenge or resentment, and I respect her for that. Danielle never stopped reaching out. Even now, every few months, she finds some new way to slip through the cracks. A new number, a handwritten note, a friend of a friend passing along a message. I used to think I owed her a response, some clean ending to tie it all off. But I've learned that closure doesn't always come in conversations or apologies. Sometimes, the most honest thing you can do is let silence speak for you. And it has. I live differently now. I don't take things for granted the way I used to. I keep fewer people close, but I love them harder. I've stopped trying to measure success by promotions or titles or what kind of car I drive. I've had all that, and it never saved me. What saved me was simpler. Long walks, quiet mornings, honest friendships, a dog who never cared how broken I was, and the slow, steady return of self-respect. Erin's still in my life. We're not labeling anything. We don't need to. What we have is honest and unforced. She knows everything, every detail, every ugly part of what happened. And somehow, she doesn't look at me like I'm a man defined by his past. She treats me like I'm still capable of building something good, and I believe her. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Danielle never asked for that vacation. If Jeremy had never come into the picture. If the lie had stayed hidden. But those are dead-end roads, and I don't walk them anymore. I don't want the version of my life that required me to be blind to survive in it. I want the one where I see clearly, even if it hurts, even if it's quieter. This story didn't end the way I thought it would, but maybe that's the point. It ended the way it needed to.